Hey, what's going on, guys? How we doing? So I got an interesting email um, a few days ago from Barrett, and he had a bunch of really interesting questions that I thought would be cool to hit on and make a video. Um, the first question that he asked was about um, players from around the world and the differences in swings between American players and Latin American players and Japanese players and basically players from all over the place. And I think there's clearly a common um, theme that you can see when you're watching players from certain parts of the world. And so I thought we'd take a few minutes to kind of talk about what I've seen, both from watching players um, on TV, playing with players. One interesting perspective that I have is that I've played with so many different teams and so many different players from all over the world that um, you start to see the commonalities and the differences between these players. And I've been able to talk to a lot of them and and get pretty good insight into what they've been doing from a young age, what their practices look like when they were 10 years old. What were they taught, what were preached to them. What were some of the main things that their hitting coaches and their parents and anyone that's kind of been involved with their development over the years. What have they told them is important when it comes to the swing? And obviously, I've been around American players my whole life, both as a player and now as a coach, and I've seen what most of our practice look like. Obviously, it varies, and I'm sure not everyone is exactly like this, but I've been around enough players to kind of get a pretty good understanding. So here's what I think, and we'll start off. I have David Ortiz here hitting the ball with 900 feet, and we'll start off with Latin America, um, that area, and you know, and specifically, we'll talk about the Dominican Republic because there's so many good players. There's so much of the major leagues now. Um, there's a lot of Dominican players, and their approach is probably a little bit different than than the American player. I've played with a ton of Dominican players, and the joke that you usually hear. It's not really a joke. It's what they're kind of told when you talk to Dominican players. Is they say that when they were younger, they were told that you can't walk your way off the island. You've got to hit your way off, and that's evident in the way that they swing the bat. Um, I haven't seen a whole lot of Dominican players that look like they're just getting up there trying to hit singles. Now, of course, there's been some guys that can really run, and you've seen some guys that'll bunt a little bit, but I think the majority of players from the Dominican Republic are guys that are looking to hit the ball hard. There are a lot of, look in the middle of the lineups, um, a lot of big, strong guys that drive in a lot of runs for a lot of teams in the big leagues. And when you watch the way that they swing, you'll see, in my opinion, a lot more athleticism, a lot more movement allowed. When I was especially with the Padres for 5 years and saw a lot of players that were getting signed as, 16, 17-year-old kids coming over to America for the first time, um, there were a lot of big swings, you could tell that they weren't overcoached to get their foot down early and keep their stride small and keep their weight back and, you know, just use their hands. I mean, these guys were taught to get their body in motion, swing hard. Don't be afraid to have some forward movement in your swing. Don't be afraid to get your hands back and get some separation. Don't be afraid to swing and miss every once in a while. Um, so there's definitely a pretty clear difference, I think, in philosophy um, and what they're teaching in the Dominican. I also think that part of it is they're probably not being taught as much as maybe in America, where there's 100,000 teams now, and every kid plays on a team, and there's not much pickup ball going on outside. I've talked to guys, and I've never been a Dominican, but I would guarantee that if you go around fields, there's a lot more pickup games going on where there's kids playing, um, and there might not be coaches around. It's not, I think more in America, most kids are playing organized baseball where, they're not going to be playing as much pickup. If they're playing a game, it's going to be on a travel team and there's going to be coaches and it's going to be very structured and sometimes overcoached. Um, and it's not really like that, in my opinion, in Dominican. Nowhere close to where it is in America. So, when kids are out just playing pickup ball, on a field or an open area in the Dominican, um, they're looking to hit the ball hard and no one's telling them, they're not taking swings and getting told, hey man, get your foot down early. Hey, don't stride too big. Hey, try to shoot that ball the other way. Um, they're trying to mash balls. They're trying to hit balls as far as they can. And, when you go to, you just go around in America and you go to games and you see a player swing and miss and, you instantly every single time it's, you hear the same things, cut down on your stride, keep your head on the ball, don't pull off, don't swing that hard, just make contact, And so I think a lot of it has to do with maybe some overcoaching in America. I've seen and talked to players, I've seen a lot of video on it actually, and talked to a lot of guys about how, in the Dominican, they're hitting with broomsticks and bottle caps. They've got these little things, they look like, I guess they are technically bottle caps, larger ones, and they throw those things. They can throw it like more accurate than some guys in America can throw baseballs, but they'll throw those things and hit with broomsticks, and they're taking leg kicks and they're squaring these things up and just killing these caps. And like I said, you see a lot more swings like this where guys are free to move and they're not being restricted and not told to, cut down on all their movements. They're letting them have leg kicks and move, and you see a lot more guys pumping the bat and all that stuff going on. So hopefully that gives a little bit of insight. I'd be interested to hear you guys' comments. But I thought it was a really interesting question, and we can talk about other countries. I've played with players from basically almost every country around the world. But I would say Dominican, a lot of the South American, Latin countries, you're going to see a similar approach, I would say. And then, when you look over into Asia and you look at, the Japanese players that I've played with, which I would say most from that area coming from Japan, you see a little bit of something different. So we can talk about that also, maybe in another video. But interested to see what you guys have to think and say about what you've seen just watching, some players from Latin America hit it versus American players, and maybe you're a young player. You can talk about what your practices look like and what you're told. So let me know what you think. Share the video with all your friends. Subscribe to the channel. And I will say I'm sorry that it's taken me a little while to put some videos up. I've been working on my Instagram page and putting a lot of videos on there. So if you haven't checked us out on Instagram, go over there, Antonelli Baseball. And I'm putting up multiple videos each day. So you guys enjoy, good luck, and we'll talk to you later.